Welcome back to Q&A Anime. You're here with Q, Akil. No David this week, he's a little sick. Probably something to do with the sick fruit that we were introduced to this chapter. Let's get into it, guys. Today we're doing a little different of a format where we're not going to cover panel for panel in the chapter, but instead we're going to talk about the developments that occurred. Major developments, we have Kuma being revealed as Bonnie's father to everybody else that is with Bonnie. So we have Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbei all learning that Kuma is Bonnie's father. How did this make you feel, Akil?
I was just happy that they finally got to see, because we knew as the audience, we knew who she was talking about immediately when she said that she came to look for Vegapunk to find out like Vegapunk did to her dad. For everyone else to finally understand that like Kuma is her father, and the fact that they know Kuma very well. I mean, like, Kuma helped out the Straw Hats by sending them on the time skip so they can handle the new world.
It's so sad Steve Jobs died.
Who the hell is Steve Jobs?
Ligma balls.
Kuma is also the one who the pacifistas were based off of, so they're very familiar with interacting with those. And so, just like the fact that now they finally get this understanding that Kuma is her dad, and it's different for her. It's not just like, oh, this is some robot I have to beat. Like, it looks like her dad. And especially because since her original dad looks, talks, and acts like a cyborg, it probably is like on a whole different level for her to see these people who look like her father and act robotic like her father now acts.
Well, I think it's interesting that in the flashback we see when Kuma's holding Bonnie up, it looks like he's almost like human, you know, like relatable, not the cold Kuma that we're used to. Because remember, he used to have the epithet Kuma the Tyrant, so he must have been one cold-blooded mofo to have that title. And I'm wondering when he turned from this either loving father into the cold, calculated Kuma that we're used to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Somewhere along the line, it seems like he just kind of got too far down the cybernetic enhancement line, or maybe Vegapunk just took advantage of him. But he's definitely not the man that he was when Bonnie was young.
Not at all. And I actually liked the fight that we see happen between the Kuma Pacifista, the police unit, and the Straw Hats. But I don't like that Bonnie decided to intervene, because this is obviously not her father. This is something that's been made to look like her father, and she has to put her emotions aside. Otherwise, she's gonna get blasted through the head like we see at the end of the fight. And now we have Luffy trying to save her again. First out of that warm eddy, now he has to get her out of the way of a pacifista laser, and I hope he makes it in time, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because if he doesn't, unless Jewelry Bonnie managed to shrink herself using her fruit, she could be like seriously injured, if not dead.
Seriously. And there were a few other minor details that I wanted to cover from the chapter. So we had the small subset of the Straw Hats finally getting clothing, they got the food, and then we kind of leave off on that Bonnie about to get sniped in the head note, and then we go off to something else that's happening in the new world. We have a certain person with a certain laugh showing up, and I think that Law is in trouble here.
Oh yeah, listen, Law's absolutely in trouble, but I think he has bigger things on his mind than the life or death situation he's in, considering that with the use of the sick fruit, Doc Q has managed to turn Law, Beppo, and like some of the rest of his crew into ladies.
Yeah, the Milady virus, I think that Doc Q calls it. I think that we're missing the bigger picture here, in which that we have Law squaring off against another Yonko, Blackbeard. Not only is this the same Blackbeard crew that attacked Marineford, attacked the Kuja pirates, but they got upgrades, right? They got new fruit powers.
And like, not just like new fruit powers, strong new fruit powers. We have Von Augur with the warp fruit, which gives him insane teleportation abilities. We have Jesus Burgess with the buff fruit, which allows him to break off a mountain and chuck it with minimal difficulty. We already covered Doc Q's sick fruit. And then on top of that, we see that Stronger has the mythical horse zone fruit model Pegasus.
Yeah, things aren't looking good for Law right now. We have him, who is a very competent Devil Fruit user, against 4 other Devil Fruit users. Obviously, we have Blackbeard, Jesus Burgess, Van Augur, and Doc Q, who are all, they obviously have some familiarity with their fruits now, because we see them just coming in and wreaking havoc on the entire Law crew. I don't know if Law is going to be able to keep up, because it's pretty much just him on the crew that's capable of defeating high bounty level opponents, right? I mean, like, who else could I mean, we have Beppo, but I don't know that Beppo can use Haki, which makes him pretty much useless against a lot of the things in the New World that they might face.
And that's the thing, we don't know the extent of what Beppo can do. I feel as though like a lot of times we never really see how strong Beppo really is, in terms of like, we see Law highlighted, he's supposed to be like one of the people who's on par with Luffy, as in the same way Kid is. Even though Luffy's consistently kind of pulling ahead of them and it kind of frustrates them, they're meant to be like, oh, these three are like, they're like the big strong like next generation, like soon to be like new Yonkos. But like, we don't see that Law necessarily has like the people to back it up. Like, Beppo's strong, but we don't see how strong. He's never done a Zoro type feat where he takes down someone like King solo, or like Killer, where we saw him take down Hawkins by himself in order to like help Kid get past his control.
The point we're trying to drive home here is that Law is fucked.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
I don't know how else to say it. Law is in trouble. He's against superhuman strength, bizarre contagion and teleportation, and then on top of that, Blackbeard is there with the Goru Goru no Mi, the Yami Yami no Mi that's capable of negating fruit powers. I think that Law is in trouble and he might not be around for much longer. They'll want that fruit and they can't have it if he's alive.
Listen, last time Blackbeard was after a fruit, we were lucky enough to have Rayleigh show up to stop him, but this time, I'm not sure who's going to be coming to save Law, because if not only is he going to take those load poneglyph rubbings, you're right, he might just take Law's fruit. And imagine Blackbeard with Law's ability. He would be practically unstoppable.
I feel like he would capture Law to use Law's special ability. For those of you that don't remember, Law's Ope Ope no Mi fruit has the ability to grant eternal youth through some special surgery that sacrifices Law's life. So obviously I think Blackbeard would want Law to use that ability on him, so that way Blackbeard could have eternal life. I think that would be the only plot point keeping Law alive from this interaction.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about the fact that he does have that ability and that like Blackbeard might be interested in it. So you're absolutely right. If anything, I think this increases his chances. I was really worried that like at the aftermath of their fight, Law would take the route of Corazon, you know, kind of getting killed off. But this does add like a new potential that he might just be held hostage. You know, they took Kobe, they might take Law hostage as well and kind of like leverage him to try to make Blackbeard an even stronger powerhouse than he already is.
Yeah, Blackbeard would win the Road Poneglyph rubbings, which would put him ever so close to One Piece. We would have Law's fruit, and we don't even know what else he would get from the interaction because we're not sure what's on Law's submarine. So one thing I wanted to discuss was Kuma, Seraphim, and Bonnie that I didn't get to discuss last chapter. Obviously, with Kuma being Bonnie's father, this Seraphim is going to be a problem because it's obvious that she can't or doesn't want to fight against anything that looks like her dad. Akil, you had mentioned earlier that it's really hard for Vegapunk to override the base personality of the cyborgs he creates. What do you think about this interaction between Bonnie and Kuma and the problem child that Kuma is?
Honestly, I think that the possibility that the reason this Kuma, the Seraphim Kuma, is a problem child is the fact that like Vegapunk used Kuma's original consciousness or like body or whatever in the Seraphim version of Kuma that he made. And so the reason it's a problem child is because he does kind of have Kuma's will, where the government can't just tell him to do something and he'll follow orders like a robot. He fights against it, he doesn't want to. And I think that potentially means that this Seraphim shouldn't encounter Bonnie. It might not necessarily even want to stay on the side of the government. It might swap sides and be like, hey, I recognize her, she's my daughter, I care about her, and start attacking CP0 and the Marines and whoever instead. And kind of we could see like the fact that, oh, the world government's plans are kind of blowing up in their face, and that they made these Seraphim as like their ace in the hole to deal with all these strong pirates, and now one of the Seraphim is allying itself with the strong pirates or the Revolutionary Army, depending on how much of Kuma's consciousness or will is still being able to like control the Seraphim version.
One thing that I also want to bring up is that because the Seraphim are child versions of what seem to be the Shichibukai, they might also inherit their childlike nature their nature when they were a child. So Kuma might not recognize Bonnie because obviously he didn't have her as a kid, but if it's the presence of mind of the modern day Kuma, then obviously he would recognize her. that just requires us to learn more about the Seraphim. And I think we're actually closer than we think about learning more about the Seraphim, because we have Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy on the way. On the other side, we have Bonnie, Jinbei, Chopper, and Luffy. So we might get a little 4-on-4 fight there because, well, I think that plot-wise, that would make a lot of sense to have those four like clash, because I don't think that Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy could take on the whole Straw Hat crew, but a subset where we have Luffy versus Lucci, Stussy versus Chopper, and then Kaku versus Jinbei, I definitely see that. And then, of course, Bonnie's left to deal with the Seraphim.
I would say that prediction does make sense. I could see that happening. Although I could also see maybe someone else might have to take on the Seraphim at first, because Bonnie's not going to want to. It's when the matchups happen, Bonnie's going to be like, I don't want to have to fight the Seraphim. It looks like my dad. And she'll fight someone else. And then whoever was fighting the Seraphim's going to be struggling. And Bonnie will have to kind of step in and be like, okay, I can't keep letting the fact that it looks like my father hold me back when we're fighting for our lives right now.
Yeah, and then speaking of, I wanted to bring up one more thing. Obviously, CP0 is going to have to take out different parts of Vegapunk. Do you think any parts of the Vegapunk model are going to be really hard to take out from the ones we've met? So just a reminder, we met Atlas, Lilith, and Shaka.
I think that not physically fight-wise, but the hardest I think for them to take on might end up being Shaka, just because he's logic. He's the smart one. He seems like he's very planning and stuff. And so I could very much see him analyzing the situation very quickly and figuring out like the best course of action to take, where he could be like, okay, like they're coming at us. He's like, okay, Lilith, you go fight this person, you go fight this person, we go do this, and like this is how we're gonna manage to navigate past this without taking a lot of casualties.
Not only that, but he probably already surmised that they were being targeted by the world government for some reason. And so I'm wondering if that's the reason he wants the Straw Hat crew, because they have a history of going against the world government for something that they believe is right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That kind of covers everything from this chapter that I wanted to talk about. Do you have anything to add, Akil?
The only thing I want to add is that I think that Sanji would definitely love to meet Doc Q and hear a little bit more about the Milady virus that he invented.
Oh, definitely. That would be Sanji's favorite virus, as long as it doesn't affect him.
Oh yeah.
Or turn a girl into a guy, because then you'd have Guy Nami and Guy Robin, and I don't think I want to see
Oh, I wouldn't want to see that either, and I think that would break Sanji.
Most definitely. That covers everything that we wanted to talk about on the channel, and I hope you guys like this new format. A lot shorter, a lot more concise, cover the major topics, and I think we might be doing this in the future, so stay tuned. Squad out.
Squad out.